It's this thing I'm about behind.
Are you ready for this one?
UCR.
It could happen.
Are you ready for this one?
UCR. We're saying what we want, give it to you non-stop. Any place, anytime, not afraid to speak our mind. That's just the way we roll, we never gonna go. Unstoppable, original, uncensored radio.
Hello,
Hey everyone. Hey, how are you guys? I was waiting for like Jeff to pop up on my screen and like introduce everything again, and here we all are.
It's all of us.
It's
It's
all
like
of
Hollywood
us.
Squares.
It really is. The Brady Bunch gone wrong. Gone wrong. So look, today we're speaking to Shannon Molloy, who's the author of 14. He grew up in a regional town, which is actually the same regional town that I'm in. I was friends with Shannon after the events of this book, and just before he went into journalism, because he moved to Brisbane before I did. Like the whole gist of the book, though, is that it's not the friendliest of places to grow up as a young gay man. And I've even found, like, coming back here as an adult, that it's different now. Like, you know, I find the atmosphere is different, but obviously my confidence is different now too. But I find it's still not probably quite there yet. It's still a very masculine-centric town. I mean, we're the beef capital of Australia. So it's cowboys and, you know, there's that air of masculinity that's just everywhere. And if you're the other on any level, you will be ostracized.
The book is absolutely fascinating. I finally got a chance to read it today. And you just can't stop turning the pages. For people in America, to me, it really kind of reminded me of Matthew Shepard. That was what we kind of had in America, but this is like Matthew Shepard had he lived through what he went through. But this is kind of somebody who went through it on a daily basis all throughout high school. So it was really gripping, and I related to it because I went to Catholic school my whole life. So I'm really kind of anxious to get to talk to him and really kind of dive into what he went through in this book. It's really fascinating.
Well, I think he's here now, so let's just bring Shannon straight on and let's get into it.
Hello.
Good morning, Shannon. How
Hi,
are
Shannon.
you?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So we were just touching just lightly on you know, just homophobia in these regional areas. And I think your book really captured that feeling of, you know, that you don't belong here, because I felt it too. And I think you were hazed by fire big time. You went through something that was far more intense than I did. But I remember when I met you, like you're a little bit younger than me. And I remember thinking like, wow, this guy's so worldly. Like he's got his shit together. But it was because you'd went there. Like I was still, when I met you, like I was older than you, but I was younger than you. Like I was still sort of, I wasn't okay with myself. I was still sort of just floating along. It wasn't until like my mid-20s when oh my God.
Wow. Oh God.
That was a night. That night was chocolate schnapps with trimmed milk. Oh. I can't believe they're running all of this now. I'm like, oh my God. Because I just said them a few things. I'm like, we don't have photos together, Shannon. None. Like just brief blips like that. Like that was from like remember I was all into like doing short films and stuff. So we would just make up crap because we were bored. We were like creative kids in a regional town. We had to just make our own little world.
Yeah.
So how are you doing now, though? Like, obviously, amazing things are happening for you. Like, you're all over the media right now. Like, every time I
book
turn on
has been
TV, I'm
great.
like, there's Shannon.
The response to the book has been phenomenal. I think you've sort of touched on it, Luke. I think most gay men or anyone from a small town really has struggled with that feeling of not belonging. It's difficult to grow up in a regional area, and for Americans who might not be familiar, Queensland, the state that Luke and I grew up in, is kind of like Texas but less sophisticated. So it's not the friendliest of places to be. And the town that I grew up in, very small, sort of 13,000 people, not a great deal to do. And the school I went to was sort of hyper masculine, all about football, and also a Catholic school. So, I just definitely did not belong. So I had to sort of escape into things that I loved, like writing and pop music from the late 90s, and being silly with my small group of girlfriends, and that's what got me through.
And we will come back to the late 90s pop, because I want to get into
Of course,
Sophie Monk and this bullshit about leaving Bardo, but we'll get into that later. So, like, what I wanted to speak to you about as well was those experiences at school, because I remember at school, I was sort of invisible, but I was accepted. Like, my circle of friends at school were straight guys. They all knew I was gay. They had to, unless it was simple. And they, but they just didn't make a thing of it. Like, I was so lucky, really. I just crossed over. And I think some of that had to do with maybe my younger brother was probably someone they were all intimidated by. I don't know. I sort of dodged a bullet because I saw other guys going through that, like, relentless attacks. And I was like, Jesus. And the saddest thing was that I just distanced myself from them. And really, I should have been someone who was helping them. I just was like, no, because I wasn't there. I wasn't okay with me. So I wasn't going to be in a place that I could support someone else who embodied the same aspects that realistically I was still ashamed of in myself. I felt that shame. And when they would pick on them, I was like, I need to not be him.
Yeah, I was the same. There was a guy at the school I went to who was pretty clearly gay, and I think in an attempt to make me feel a bit better, the school sort of paired me up with him as a bit of a buddy, and it just made things 10 times worse because it drew even more attention to me, and it sort of, doubled the pain that I was feeling. And so I did the same thing. I pushed him away, and I didn't want to hang out with him. I didn't want that extra attention. And I write about it in the book a little bit, and it was probably the toughest part of the book to write because I, for the first time, saw elements of my bullies in myself a little bit, that ostracizing him and pushing him away and not wanting anything to do with him and pretending he didn't exist. And so I was much the same.
Because that's like internalized homophobia, and that's so rampant. Look at Grindr. Look at it. Like, no fams, no this, no that. Like, it's still toxic in a way because these people aren't, and including all of us, people are sort of not okay with themselves, so they're making the other gay men the other still. They're othering people, and we're not a community that's come together like other minorities.
I thought
I would venture to say, though, that this is a common dynamic in disenfranchised people. And I just started your book today, Shannon, and I have to tell you, it's riveting. And the reviews that I saw online when I bought it were amazing. Everybody was raving about it.
Thank you so
good
much.
on you there.
Thank you.
But I do think it does touch on that very common feeling of anybody who feels disenfranchised, not just for gay young men in a masculine world. The themes there can be very universal.
Yeah. Well, I think it's in any community where you are disenfranchised, it's about just trying to survive. It could be surviving a terrible day or a terrible town or, a terrible emotional state. And sometimes you do whatever you can to survive, and it's not always a positive thing.
Oh no, I agree. But it is part of the human experience. It is what we do. It's how we socialize, and yes, there is that internalized self-hatred that really, it's so hard to get in contact with. You don't
Yeah.
realize how you're pushing people away.
I think it was interesting how you also talked about Jonathan in the sense that you had a kind of tinge of jealousy towards him about the way that he handled himself and how it all seemed to kind of wash off him.
Yeah, he didn't care at all. He did not mute himself in any fashion, whereas I sort of tried to talk with a deeper voice and walk less gay and sort of hide away and be this kind of fraction of myself. He was the total opposite and just did not give a shit what anyone thought. And I admired that even at the time and even more so now, given how difficult our circumstances were. He was incredible. I've tried to find him since to see what he's up to now, but I can't. I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to know the road that he took. But he was an incredible guy, and I really regret not learning more from him.
Well, I think
Well, that's like when I met you though, Shan, like you were so much more comfortable with yourself when I met you because you'd already been through all of that, like what's happened in the book, and then you went over to Fire Island and you'd found yourself.
Yeah.
So I remember when I met you, I was like, wow, like this guy's so, like he knows who he is and he's cool with it. And I don't know, I just found it so captivating. And like, I think our friendship sort of stemmed from there because we were both sort of, locked in this little town. We wanted to be doing all these creative things. I remember we were like writing films and everything at some point. You ran your magazine as well.
Yeah.
Like you started a magazine before you became a journalist. And it was all fun stuff though, because, it was an outlet. It was like something that was an escape from the reality of when we walked out the door and there was just relentless resistance, really.
Yeah. Well, the book it's called 14. It's about me at 14, so not the most creative title. But at 15, when I was 15, a couple of weeks after my 15th birthday, I went to the US on student exchange. And America completely saved me. It showed me that there was a big wide world out there beyond the confines of this horrible and really repressive little town and an existence that I had experienced my whole life. And of course, I had the best American experience that I could have possibly dreamed of, living in Connecticut and spending every second week in Manhattan and summer on Fire Island, which was just the most ridiculous experience I've ever had. And so I came back confident, I guess, in the sense that the life didn't have to be like that, or life wasn't always going to be like it had been, and that there was a place out there for me, and so I could push on a little bit, and also not apologize for myself as much as I had.
And I think that, like, throughout the book, you talk about all of these different aspects of your that year and then going through all these different times in your life. And I think when you talk about America, there was a point early on in the book where you talked about your idea of love and it being inspired by Hollywood. And there was one part where you talked about like never been kissed. And I was like, oh, I know. And I was like, that is one of my lines where it's like, I'm sorry it took so long to get here. And she's like, I know what you mean. Right.
Yeah.
And then there was this, right? Like that is I'm like, oh, with the kiss and it fades and they're the only things you can see. And I'm like, that's my movie.
Yeah.
My cousin, like, we're watching, she's beating the shit out of me. And I'm like, I want that moment. And then you talk about this, later in the book, I saw this where James just took it down. But James, can you pull it up and read that quote from the book? And I thought this was so interesting.
I longed
James,
for a boy who was.
Did we lose his mic?
Did we lose? Oh my God! Seriously?
And we lost James's sound.
I can hear Mike. I can hear him.
You can hear me? Okay.
I can hear you.
Just do me a favor and tell Jeff when I'm done talking. All right.
Okay, sure.
I longed for a boy who was cool but kind to come along. Let me start over. I longed for a boy who was cool but kind to come along, fall madly in love with me and take me away. We would be strong. He would be strong but gentle. He would have the kind of touch that felt like it might melt my skin. He would make me happy in a way no one else had been able to, a contention that I couldn't make myself feel.
A contentment. But
Contentment, sorry.
so he's finished. Yeah, no, he's finished, Jeff. Sorry, there's like audio issues here, Shannon, again. Like,
It's a brave new word.
I'm like over here like this is gonna be so awkward to try to like now like drive this conversation when I'm like I'm just gonna guess and like
but you can hear the rest of it. I think we all sort of romanticize that love. Like, you know, I went through that too, and I obviously divulged that as a very personal thing, Shannon, like I chatted to you about, because I'd just been through all of that as well with somebody who was really unavailable, you know, completely unavailable. And it really made me then feel like I was not good enough. And I owned all of those feelings for so many years. Like I went into my 20s with that. And I don't think it was until I had a really terrible relationship that I turned inwards, and I knew then I had to sort this out because there were issues here and I couldn't keep, you know, blaming out of things. I had to really turn inwards and go, no, like that's enough because you're going down a bad path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that all comes from that like romanticized idea of love, because we all want it, but it can be the reality, but you've got to be in the right mindset. You got to, what does RuPaul say? You got to love yourself before you can love somebody else.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I thought his quote was particularly interesting, Luke, because of like that last line about he was looking for somebody to fill his, you know, to give him that contentment.
Absolutely.
You know, especially at that age, you know, when you're so lost. You don't know. He's trying to convince himself that maybe he's bisexual. You know, you're at a Catholic school.
Shannon, I've got people messaging me right now saying they're buying your book. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
This is your unofficial book tour right now, isn't it?
Perfect.
Because it got cancelled.
It did
because
get
of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Shannon had all of these appearances booked, and then it was like, bam.
Yeah.
Because of COVID. So
as Luke's telling me about this, I'm like, oh, you know, from Australia. Okay, well, this is different, you know. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, okay, like some of it's a little different because, you know, American, whatever. But I'm like, okay, I've gone to Catholic school my whole life, but it was co-ed. I'm like, geez, this is like reading. But I never got attacked. So, I mean, the stories
Jeff
are a little
asked
bit
me
different.
at one point, he said, is this fact or fiction? And I said, it's completely fact.
Yeah. And
completely. Because it's that awful that a lot of people can't imagine that things can be like that, but they are.
Yeah. And I've heard from so many people that have shared very similar experiences or even worse experiences. And, you know, this story is very difficult in parts, but it's by no means unique. And Jeff, as you've sort of touched on, even if you weren't physically bullied or there wasn't violence, there are so many elements in this that people can relate to, I think.
Absolutely.
And that's it's kind of sad, and it shows how far society has to go in supporting vulnerable kids, particularly.
Right. Well, and there was
on that note, we're about to bring Sandy on, who works with GLBT youth. But before we bring her in, I wanted to speak to you, Shan, because I saw that you're featured in Women's Day in the Mother's Day reading list.
Yeah.
And you spoke there about your mum is the hero of your story.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about your mum very briefly. I remember your mum like really tenderly because she was somebody, she had this strength about her. I remember like when I met you, and then I'd come, like, because you lived a street away from me, so I'd walk to your house like most days.
Yeah.
And your mum would have a cup of coffee for me when I'd walk in, and she'd sit down and chat with me. And just the wisdom that she had, she was so wise and just was imparting all this wisdom to me, because I think she could see that I was lost too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I was this lost kid, and I really like treasured those moments. And we used to hang out at her salon as well and have some like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
She's just this beautiful person. And when you were writing about her, I read your book in one night, by the way. I
Wow.
bought it at like 8 p.m. that night. I read it till 3 that morning. I had to do a morning shift the next day.
Sorry.
Hey, no, I couldn't put it down because
Wow.
Yep.
I knew you'd told me all this stuff, but I was feeling it more because you were telling it in a way that I could really be there with you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
your
It's an-
writing is amazing.
Oh, thanks. It's an important
It's-
point that I want to get across too. You know, the book is obviously very, very heavy in parts, but there's also some light and lots of love, and this really powerful message about the importance of kindness, both for those that receive it like I did, and that's what got me through. But also for those that show kindness and that it can literally save a life, as it did in my case. So it's not all depressing.
No, there was
no,
great comments.
he's going on about pop. That's why I want to get into later on about Sophie Monk. I'm not happy with that bitch, but we'll get on to her soon.
No, like the art
Okay.
teacher and the girl. Well, wait, Luke, before we bring Sandy on, you should, because you were just talking about his mom, you should show the quote about his mom from the book. Because, you know, I was obsessed with pulling quotes from the book.
Sure. James, bring it up and I'll read it out. Oh, God, the text is really small. And the live thing's over most of it. Okay, she would never allow herself to accept that kind of empathy from anyone. I think, like me, she feared that opening the door, even a crack, would result in a torrent of floodwater bursting in. That torrent would destroy the flimsily constructed safe havens we had built for ourselves and struggled to maintain. It had to be kept at bay. Trauma had to be packed away in a tight box and ignored altogether. I still find myself doing it now. I know Mum does too. That's how we cope, for better or worse.
Let's see what Sandy's got to say about that.
Sandy, are you here?
Apparently
yeah,
not. Maybe she got lost.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Hello.
Not me.
Thanks for having me on, and it's lovely to see you and hear from you, Shannon.
Hi,
and
Sandy.
about your book. Hello. I guess I'm curious just about your experience of growing up in a regional town, because I'm a social worker and I have worked with young people in a youth mental health organisation. And a lot of the young people that I've worked alongside have been from the LGBT community. And I have seen, I think, the impacts of regionality, which I think you've pointed out. But also, I'm really curious about any strengths that might come from being in a regional town. I'm sure we've just heard about, coping. Just how did you get through, and what were some of the strengths that you would draw on in a regional town?
I think the experience definitely made me more resilient. I would have preferred some different lessons to get to that point, but for better or worse, it made me a stronger person. But I think what got me through were community links, and not an LGBT community, because there wasn't really one at that time. But my friends, we were extremely close as a result of them supporting me and them seeing me struggle and wanting to help me and love me. And so I lent on those people, and that's what got me through. And I've done a couple of talks with sort of youth groups so far about the book, and it's one of the things that I've told them. Not everyone has the luxury of escaping to America on student exchange like I did to get away from my horrible experience. But if there's one thing that they can do, it's to take full advantage of the people around them that love them, whether it be parents or friends or a teacher that they trust, or a social worker or guidance counsellor. Is to never ever be afraid to speak up when you're struggling, and to lean on people. And that's what I did, probably without realizing it a lot of the time. But my friends and a couple of really, really great teachers got me through the worst of that year.
Yeah, I can imagine those protective factors, being friends and family, and being able to lean on them when there's that level of, I think, comfort as well with having those people around you, and just being able to grow up as well, because you're going through such huge life stages. These are absolutely monumental milestones. If we're looking at social development theories, 14 is it. You're going through ID versus ego, and you're trying to understand who you are in this world. And when people are telling you, or the narrative is that something's wrong with you and you're not right, and you're not okay with who you are and your sexuality, it's really damaging. So I guess you do have to look to those support networks, which is what I've found in practice as well, is how much young people do lean on friends who are awesome and family who are understanding and open and not bigots. So, it really, really helps. I did have one more question. I haven't read your book yet, but I'm really, really curious to dive into it probably this afternoon. I just read a little excerpt from somewhere that said that you didn't quite know that you were gay at the time, but you just felt like you were different. I'm just curious, what was that point of difference for you?
Oh gosh, it was so many things. First and foremost, it was the masculinity. I went to a very hyper masculine school where masculinity was the currency, and I had none. So that was probably the first thing. But from my earliest memories, I just felt like there was something different about me. And of course, as I got a little bit older and hormones came into play, thoughts about handsome boys or actors from Hollywood or whatever started to creep in, and then it became sort of harder to ignore. But I think I knew, but I didn't really understand what it fully meant or what the consequences would be. And it was a time when, in Australia at least, there were no real gay role models. There were no gay characters on television or in films. The only sort of stuff that I'd heard through my childhood about being gay was the AIDS epidemic and this spate of really horrible murders of gay men. That they still don't know exactly how many, but at least 80 or 90 gay men were killed in Sydney over a 15-year period by this gang of sort of homophobes. And so that was my experience of the narrative of what it meant to be gay. And so I think I probably knew that I was likely gay from an early age, but I did not want to be that because I didn't understand what it meant.
Yeah. And it sounds like that.
And there's that fear of rejection too, Shannon, from the ones that you love.
Absolutely.
Like from our mothers, there's that fear that and their fears are put on us as well, because they worry for us and we feel it. So we want to hide it more because we don't want to worry them.
Right.
And it just becomes a cycle of just disassociating from who you really are.
Well, I think it's something that's very confusing for younger people. Especially, did you go to Catholic school for your whole life?
Yep.
Yes, so did I. I didn't know any gay people.
No,
I
me
did
either.
not know. I never saw one, and I came from an Italian Catholic. There would be like gay jokes. So my mother, like yours, was great at protecting me and kind of, I had Barbies, so I knew it was different, but I didn't really know what gay was. I heard it, and I don't really, I didn't, there was nobody on TV.
Yeah.
There's nothing. So
I probably should have known when I would play rugby with my brothers and the boys in the neighborhood, but I would insist on wearing pink, a pink outfit, and they all knew.
Yeah.
I liked fake nails and high heels. Fake nails and high heels. I liked long nails and high heels like Grandma and her wig. That's how.
Grandma had wigs too.
Wow.
Yeah, she was a singer, so she had wigs for when she performed. So I'd like to put on her wigs, wear her fake nails, and put on her heels, man, and then sing in her microphones, and put on shows on the holidays.
I used to play a game with my grandma called Avon Lady, where I would get her Avon and walk up and down the block, and then knock on her door and sell her product back to her. So,
did you make money from it though?
I made a lot of money. She was
there you go.
Generous. Yeah.
Smart kid.
It's interesting, like to hear about like the social construction of what is supposedly gay. But I'm curious, it's so much more than that. Would you agree? Like, obviously, it's not just a social construction. So, was there anything else that happened for you outside of this experimentation of different modes of gender in terms of your sexuality? How did you feel you started to embody that, Shannon?
It was really going to the US on exchange, and I just had this absolute luck of landing with this woman who had been born and raised in Flushing, Queens, and was larger than life and didn't hate anybody in the world. And she clocked me the moment I walked off the plane, and she was waiting. And within a few days, she just subtly suggested, like, oh, there's this gay youth group in the next city over. Do you want me to take you? And I just sort of terrified, nodded and said, okay. And that was it. She was there for me from then. And I think that was the real turning point, was an adult who spoke about being gay without fear or maliciousness or judgment, and just had my back and sort of helped me through figuring out what it meant for me to be gay. And it was amazing.
Yeah, and recognizing that is inherently who you are.
Yeah.
And without that prejudice, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like it was a very empowering experience.
Yeah.
What would you say to young people?
Do you still stay in
who
touch with her, Shannon? Oh, sorry,
No,
Janet.
you're right, Luke. I was wondering just if there was young people listening, and say if they didn't have the privilege, I guess, of going to the US or leaving their regional towns, what would you say to them? What else could they do?
Well, the message that I hope comes from this book, there's like I said, there's really heavy parts, but there's also a lot of love and kindness, and that's what got me through. But the overarching message is that it gets better. Today's terrible day doesn't last forever. It might last for a long time, like it's in my case with the book. But fast forward to where I am now, and my life is wonderful and very happy, and I couldn't have imagined that at that age, because I thought that's just how life was always going to be. But the message is that, of course, it's not. High school doesn't define you. Your small town and the nasty people that might be around you don't define you, and that won't be how things always are. And better days are to come. It sounds really cliche, and it's sometimes hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. And so that's what I would tell any young person, gay, straight, trans, whatever, who's having a tough time, is to just hang in there, because it truly, truly does get better. And I hope that I'm living proof of that.
Yeah, you definitely.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm so proud of your career.
Oh, thanks.
Because I've watched from afar. Like, I've watched you just your journalist career just take off, and then you just became part of just mainstream media, and now you're doing television more and more, and then you've released this book. And I think it's wonderful, Shannon, because you've really turned everything around. How those people tried to make you feel, you've just risen above it. Not just risen above it, but like shot fire back down at everything, because they should be in awe of you because of what you've achieved.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. Look at me now, bitches.
Exactly. Speaking of bitches, how rude, Sophie Monk. Why won't she just rejoin Bardot? They're trying to reform the group, and Sophie's being rude. She's being rude.
She's moved on.
I know she's got a TV career, but that's all shut down right now. There's COVID-19. Record some Bardot from your home, girl. It's okay. Yeah.
Do one reunion album, and then you can go back to Love Island. I hope that happens. Maybe they just need to throw more money at her. I don't know. But I would love to see it.
Yeah, money sweetens every deal, doesn't it?
Okay. Everyone has a price.
Amen. Okay, so I want to know if, one of my favorite parts of the books were you and your homegirl. we're getting jiggy with it to Miss Brittany and
Yeah.
some
Actually, Shan,
Destiny's
I've got a
Child
photo.
something.
Can we show that photo of like Shan dancing? It wasn't the same girl from the book. This was after the fact. But I
This bitch.
I'm so
this
sorry,
bitch,
Shannon.
This bitch looks like she's ready to go to the club with her glow sticks and her little lighters. And like, you know, I don't know if you guys did that in Australia. Did y'all have like the glow sticks you could put in your mouth and go like to the club and they play the
Oh, we absolutely did.
And you know, you'd be sitting there with your like what the hell was it, jump rope and shit with your like you just look like you were ready to go.
Oh God. Yeah. I loved to dance, but I wasn't terribly good at it. But yeah, one of my friends in the book, Morgan, her and I would make up these stupid dances, and that's sort of how we occupied our weekends, was watching video music countdown shows, and trying to copy the dances.
Well, you said they were easy enough. Someone, do you still know them?
Some.
Do you? Yeah. Well,
no.
What do you mean?
Why?
What?
Well, they're sort of easy, like Behind the Head, you know, from Vogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just so happens. We maybe have a. I don't even know how to pull this lie off to try to get you to do the dance. I don't know, but we should totally do the. I was gonna be like, Britney Spears is here. I was like, how can I pull this off in 3 minutes to get this guy to do this dance? I don't know. I got nothing.
My body is too tired and weary these days for booty drops and and shimmies. So
it is 11:40 in the morning.
No.
He's like, I'm a serious author now. I cannot be twerking at 11.
Wow.
I tried, people. I tried.
You did try. Look, I'm really grateful
go
for
buy
that,
the
Jeff.
book. Go buy the book. Go buy the book.
Actually, Shannon, can I
Absolutely.
like bombard you with one more cringy moment?
Please.
Just one more. Okay. Do you remember like our short films?
Yes, of course I do.
And we shot one in your mum's salon.
Yes.
Well, we have a very small clip from that.
Oh, you do
It's
not.
just like, I do, because I found them. I was looking for stuff for us, and I'm like, Jesus Christ,
you
there's nothing.
wouldn't
Like,
have had to go through this had you danced.
had you danced, we wouldn't be bringing this shit out the closet.
Just saying.
There was a film
All
that
right,
we did
Jade.
where we did that, I remember.
Oh, what's happening?
Oh my god, I'm so excited. It's my first day on the job.
Oh, I know.
And I love this coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, lady, you gotta help me.
Hush, child, what's wrong?
Please, me on shopping systems just wouldn't let me shop. Oh. And they call me a trash.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I'm so sorry, Shay, but when I watched it, I was laughing because I remembered that was your dialogue that you wrote for them.
Yeah, I wrote that script.
I was like, Jesus.
Wow.
And the scene when she went into the shop and we got like one of our friends' mums to like be horrible to her. And I'm like, oh my God, like it was hilarious because we were like, it was like a spoof of Pretty Woman. I don't even know what we were doing. It was like Scooby-Doo mashed up with Power Rangers.
Could have made me pay for the rights for Jennifer Lopez Waiting for Tonight so you could have danced to that. Instead
Instead, we
what
had that.
happened.
Wow. That was
welcome.
a real experience.
You're welcome, Shannon. You're welcome.
so
You're
much.
so welcome.
But
Wow.
like when I was looking at that, because I've been to that same shopping village now, Shannon, like there's obviously a different store now where your mum's salon is. But when that clip, because I hadn't seen it for 15 years, 20 years, like that's how old it is, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking at it and like all those memories came back of like, you know, you and I sitting at the back of that salon and, you know, listening into like your mum and your sister, like talking to all the women in the shop. We'd be like sitting there, like catching up on all the gossip. We'd be like, you know, like, what's she doing today? But that was just like our life. It was fun. It really was. And it's a memory I'll always treasure, Shan.
Me too.
And same as our friendship. Like it was
Me too.
it was beautiful. And I think we got ourselves through a really tough time by just doing silly things like what we just saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness,
Did I ju-
boys. I don't even know how to handle that video. I'm still like over here trying to process.
Yeah.
Oh, it was far worse than that. I picked like the least
Luke,
offensive moment from the whole thing.
No, I have to say, Shannon, I've seen some of Luke's other material, and that probably was one of his better things. At least he had clothes on.
Right.
What are you implying with this? Like, Jesus.
Those other videos you send sometimes in the middle of the night to James and I are a little like,
He's a liar. This is all exaggerated now. This is getting derailing big time. Sandy, what do you have to offer?
I'm still processing as well. I think it was a great exposition of self in a salon. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Well done for having a go. I think what we just saw was an example of what we were talking about with keeping your friends close, getting through it. Nothing better to do in a regional town, so make a really strange little film. So well done. You got through it.
We did. That's a good message.
Yeah, good remedy. Yeah, well done. Nice.
Thank you.
Now, Shan, I know you've got to go because it's getting on to 1:45. Yeah, you do. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Where can
Your book is
everybody
brilliant.
find you? Oh, there we go.
So the book is in the US. You can get it on Kindle or Audible or any of the other sort of ebook places. Or in Australia, you can buy it at all good bookshops, but also in ebook and audiobook as well.
Excellent. And you know what? Like, we're giving away a copy of your book through Kindle today as well. Yeah. So all we need is just somebody just to comment and say, I want that book, and it is your book.
Oh, and also, not only are we giving away his book, we're giving away one of my little goofy favorite by Miss Christine Elise McCarthy. Ooh. So comment in the chat room, and you're going to get 2 books today, kids. Bathing and the Single Girl. My 2 new favorite books.
Amazing.
I know.
Well, thank you so much. It's lovely to be here, and I'm very grateful for the support. Yes. And it's been fun. I wish I didn't have to go to
thanks
work.
for this random stop on your book tour.
Just quit. It's fine. Just tell them you can't make it. Tell them you have diarrhea, and you're going to hang out with your friends.
Jeffrey.
Thank you, Shannon. And
thank you.
Oh, gosh. And we will chat soon. Hey.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was great. And I'm really glad to see that he's doing so well because...
from his description in the book, I was a little worried about what he was going to look like. I didn't look him up beforehand because I wanted to be surprised on air.
Oh, and what did you think, Jeffrey?
He was an attractive
How did you feel?
man. He was an attractive man. I was a little worried, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, my God. Such an awful bitch.
I'm just going to say it. I was so
What did
worried.
you think you... I don't even want to ask what you thought you were going to say.
I was picturing, like how they always have the kid in the movies. Like Jason X, the nerd that gets killed, the little gay boy. With the long hair. Like
he wasn't even gay. Jeff, he wasn't gay. That kid wasn't gay.
That kid was gay. He was a little gay boy.
I just think it's funny that Jeff didn't even look at like our plug that we used to promote the show that had his picture on it, so he would have known what he looked like.
I purposely blocked his photo out because I didn't want to see it because I wanted to read the book with like my own
interpretation of who he was.
Yeah. Because I wanted to like be surprised when he came on the show.
Yeah.
Is that weird?
But, the book really does touch on stuff that, that homophobia still lingers in these communities.
Well, I'm
And,
so mad we didn't even get to talk about all this stuff. Like, there was another quote that he talked about in homophobia, Luke. Like, in the book, where he talks about, like, for him, he thought it was way deeper than homophobia. Now that I can hear James, you want to pull that quote up? Somebody
I can't read that.
I got it.
The live thing's over it again. I can see the first couple of words I can't see because the live's over it.
I know.
Those
James.
boys, I got it. Those boys, Christian and his mates sought it out that night, and they sought to stamp it out. That does not feel like a fear to me. That feels like dangerous malevolence.
Oh my Lord!
Malevolence. I'll read the rest.
I can't
Just
read.
like those gangs of men who roamed around Bondi Beach.
I'm simple. I'm from Missouri. I'm backwoods Barbie, and I don't know how to fucking read.
Malevolence. Just like those gangs of men who roamed around Bondi Beach and its surrounds in the 1980s and 90s, hunting for homosexuals to mercilessly, I can't read either, bash and kill. That is not phobia. That is derangement. That is pure evil. That was really something. When you were hearing about all of these murders, no one cared.
You also let me read these. I'm the theater major. You also let me do the reading.
But yeah, at the time in the media, it was so
not heteronormative. That's just exactly what it is. That if you're not heteronormative, you're not performing in that way in society, you get killed. That is.
But Sandy, horrible. My fear at that time was, as a young man, and I remember hearing about all these murders, nobody really cared. When there was the Anita Cobby murder and all these other horrible murders, Australia was just so mortified and against it. How many people were going missing and then being found dead around Bondi and no one cared? Oh, they were a gay man. They were involved in prostitution. They were this, they were that. They were just not deemed sympathetic victims. Yeah. So that's probably why that gang got away with it for so long.
Yeah, and it's the same as how they dispose of women. You think about women who sadly work in the sex industry, who they just dispose of, and no one cares. No one cares because they're deemed as someone who's not worthy of being cared for. And that's what he's, I think, striking us with in that quote, is that it is just pure evil, and it is just patriarchal hatred of anyone who's not performing heteronormatively. That's my interpretation of it.
I agree completely. Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so was it the whole going on in the whole country of Australia, the whole continent? What was going on? Was it just in one area?
No, it was in one area. Yeah, no, it was in Bondi, which is in Sydney. Just because it was like a hookup spot, apparently, like a cruising area. And all of these men would be just going missing there. And then they'd later be found. Some of them would be found. I don't know if all of them were, down on the rocks because it was like a cliff face into the ocean. They would be found later, they're obviously just thrown over. And I don't know, it went on for years. There's actually a documentary about it on Amazon Prime. It's like a criminal investigation show, and it's 2 episodes, I think, are dedicated to those Bondi murders. And they really go into it, and they said, look, we'll never know how many people actually died because a lot of these people were invisible. There were sex workers, there were this, there were that. So there's no real account of who went there, who went missing. Only the ones they found, really.
It's kind of scary.
It was like Matthew Shepard times 1,000, but everyone knows about Matthew Shepard.
Right.
Do you guys really know about Bondi?
No.
No, because no one cared. That's the truth.
Well, I'm sure there was other things that happened around the country, and we had Stonewall, and I mean... Well,
we also have, in this country right now, there are trans women of color being murdered every day that never get reported and just, never get called on.
Exactly, because they're made invisible in this society too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're marginalized to such an extreme where they're just disposable. And the police aren't even bothering to, make it a big deal.
I remember, like, I
It's
know we're
just
getting a little,
unacceptable.
like, we're getting off track a bit because there is positive messages in 14. So it's not all about this
Oh,
horrible.
absolutely.
But you know, that's where this horribleness comes from, though, is this mindset that it is okay to other somebody and to treat them with no humanity. And I think we've come a long way in this world. It's not as bad as that now, but we still got a long way to go. And I still am concerned. You know, I still live here. I've overheard people who live very proximal to me referring to me as that faggot as I pulled up at my house. And I'm just like,
Why stop
okay.
sleeping with their husbands? You'll be fine.
Please, I don't mix with the locals. But
I know.
my fear then was too.
Oh my God, that's
you
what
know,
I tell my friend Anthony. I'm like, you know, I call him the taste of Syracuse. He's gonna kill me. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah, stop
So
using
dead.
names, Jeffrey.
I didn't say the
yeah,
last
but like
name.
that fear of homophobia, like it's there inside of me too. That I'm worried that my daughter could be like susceptible to the fallout of that if I stay in this regional area, because you know, kids talk. I heard a little kid the other day, like she's in daycare now, she's a baby. I heard a little kid the other day at her daycare say, "Oh, that's her dad. She doesn't have a mum. She must be dead." And I'm like, wow. And like the girl's mother was just like, "Oh, don't say things like that," and whatever, like brushed it off. But I'm like, because we are an other. We're an other here. We're not like the other families.
Time to go up to that little kid when nobody else is around and be like, "I killed her."
Jeffrey.
Do it. Fuck that little kid.
Jeffrey. But no,
What?
it's not about that little kid. It's about the mindset, because, you know, we're not the, you know, the normal one mum, one dad, the nuclear family. We're not. We're certainly very different. So I have
people
concerns.
Don't talk about it. They're afraid because they think little kids can't take it. But the problem isn't the little kids; it's the adults that can't take it. They're putting their
that's
shit
true.
onto
Absolutely.
these children. We're kids.
Mhm.
But
They
that's
don't
true.
care.
But then what
They don't
happens
even
then?
notice
It perpetuates through with like children who have no filters. It then becomes toxic, and it becomes.
Let me tell you what, Julie.
Institutionalization. Like they're becoming institutionalized into going, the nuclear family is the norm, and this is how society rolls. It keeps me safe. You know, this is a cultural thing as well. You know, it's something that happens. It's our first social institution as we're growing up, is our family. And you're absolutely right. It's definitely something. These are fears that are projected from family to child. And it's, if you look at it in that biological essentialist way, where you're looking at how these keep people safe, that's what they're doing. You know, they think they're keeping themselves safe by being bigots. So, you know, unfortunately, this is what happens.
Absolutely. Like they think they're like but what are you protecting them from? Just telling them the truth? Like when people tell their kids, "Oh, we can't call it a penis and vagina."
Yeah, that censorship doesn't help, especially for young people as well, like not growing up, having some normalization of, you know, aspects of themselves that they take into adulthood, you know? And I mean, yeah, it's a bit scary, really.
Yeah, no. Like my 3-year-old calls it a penis and a vagina because that's what the fuck it is.
And they know then that those are, you know, theirs. And if we're thinking about protecting kids as well, no better way than to go, okay, that's yours. No one else should touch that. You know, those kind of things. Like if we look at how children can be groomed as well, if they have no knowledge of what that is and the significance and importance of it, then how do we safeguard? So, you know, it works a lot of ways, doesn't it?
Like, oh, my hooter. Your hooter.
What?
My wife
I've heard
never
some
taught her
strange.
kid. She caught her thing, her peachy. My mother, till she was like, she got her period. My grandmother convinced her it was called the jejibra.
The jejibra.
A jejibra.
What's
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck's a jejibra? A jejibra.
exactly?
Wait, I can do it. A
I think
jejibra.
it goes back to the old country, Jeffrey.
Right.
That's old country, I'm pretty sure.
I'm like, what in the hell? So when she went to school, or like what my neighbor, she called the doctor. She's like, she's got a rash on her peachy, and they're like, what? I'm sorry, what's a peachy?
But they're using these words though to like, it's almost like, oh, we're so frightened of what it really is. Let's give it a cute little name and avoid like everything. Like, no, just call it out.
It's conservative thinking. It's just conservatism. It's that, it's quite Christian, conservative. Yeah. I mean, not all Christians are like this, obviously,
right.
But a large proportion.
Yeah, but that's how little Johnny got his asshole fucked by the priest, okay?
Well, there you go.
Oh my God, Jeffrey.
But it's everywhere, though. It really is everywhere. I am a nurse, like you, Luke, and I wrote a note where I described, patient is explaining, location of wound on the penis. And my supervisor said, do you really want to put that there? And I'm like, penis is the medical term. What do you want me to call it? Him? It's like, this isn't, no. What are you talking about?
Extremity?
Penis.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Into how are we identifying people now as well? I mean, you may have a trans person who is saying that they are a woman and they don't identify that as a penis any longer. So, I mean, I know you guys have only got a few minutes left, but I mean, that's kind of a bit of an identity thing as well. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
I think that's a whole show that we really
oh my God.
Well, yeah.
See? Oh, I wouldn't even think. See, I'm like such an asshole when it comes to that now because I'm so like, I don't. Oh.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic as well. And I think with political correctness, I think it's something that's challenging to bring up and just have a conversation about.
I think it would be great to really, like, discuss gender and everything, like, just all on the table, have different people from different walks as well. Kind of like what we want to do with our sex worker talk. I'm not sure of the date of that now because I'm still liaising with Jenny, and we haven't arranged a date yet because of some, logistical problems. So I will speak with her a little bit more and then I'll get back with the date. It was planned for next Tuesday night, but it could change. And it might be just a regular old uncensored radio on Tuesday. We will see, though. We will come up with something. There'll be something crazy.
Oh, there's always fun stuff going on when you got Peach Blossom in the office. And everybody going crazy on our page with the questions we're talking about. Oh, Lord. Honey, but now, I mean...
Oh, actually, yeah, let's talk about that real quick. What's going on the page? Like that meat thing? And, like, people are attacking. Like, we ask a question, and they're almost assuming our stance on the question. And I know you are triggering them now because you're deliberately, like, playing with them. I can see it. I know what you're doing.
You're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
I see you deliberately triggered them. But they're assuming the stance on it straight away. It's like, is this some vegetarian agenda? And rah,
oh, my God. That was so funny. They were like, what are you, a fucking vegan? I'm like, no, bitch. Look at the pictures. You see the size of me? Motherfucker, I like my ribs. I don't really eat ribs. They're too messy. Like, I'm kind of like a freak like that. Like, I've tried some ribs. They're
You're more
good,
of a buffalo wing kind of kid, aren't you?
No.
That also messy.
No. And here's the thing. Like, honestly, like, I stopped eating wings for a year because I bit into one and saw a tendon, and it freaked me out so bad that I couldn't eat chicken wings no more. No, because once I think about meat and what it really is, I'm like, nope, can't do it. No, I'm kind of freaky like that. I can't. Meat very much.
It's not hard to find alternatives. Look at Christine's book, Christine's site, where she's sharing all of these vegan recipes.
Dude, Christine,
like the butter chicken with no butter, no chicken, and it looks amazing.
Yes,
it looks amazing.
Delightful.
Actually, Sandy, you would love that because I know that you're a vegetarian, aren't you?
Yeah,
delightful.
You would love Christine Elise's.
Delightful. Oh God, James, help me please. Before we go, I want to make sure I get it right. So Christine Elise McCarthy, Bathing in the Single Girls, the book, and then you can follow her on YouTube. She does like vegan recipes. She substitutes a lot of stuff. She's kind of like, I don't want to say half-ass vegan because she's not, but she really kind of has like I don't give a fuck it kind of attitude, and I just love it about her. Like she really kind of has that Emily Valentine kind of attitude. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever seen 90210, she just really is that like kind of fuck off girl, you know? And
Yeah.
she really put some amazing recipes out that even if you're not, you know, if you like meat, like the shit looks good. And I've tried some of them and they really are delicious. So it's
I'm trying the butter
Definitely.
chicken one. I'm going to do that.
Delightful,
Oh.
delicious, delovely.com.
I was close. So yeah, so definitely check that out.
Delicious,
Subscribe to
lovely.
her. So, yeah, it's awesome.
And we're giving away the 2 books today, guys. Thank you, everyone, for today. It was kind of fun. It was like we keep flipping the switch. Like a few days ago, it was like all horror, horror, horror. Today, it was like social constructs, prejudice in society. Who knows
Shit.
sex workers are next.
Luke,
aren't
Luke, can you text him? Can you text him and ask him how many quarters? I forgot. We never got an answer from Todd.
Oh, well,
We're
you
gonna
can
have-
find out the answer from Todd. I don't know.
Todd.
Shannon's married. That's inappropriate. And I'm his childhood friend.
Oh, honey, wait a minute. Excuse me. You listened to the show for how many years? When we were on Blog Talk? And how many
Okay, I'll
years
ask
did
him
I
how
say,
many quarters.
Good morning, Australia. How many years did I say good morning, Australia on Blog Talk for you?
Before this show ends in a fight, make sure you guys are following us on Twitter at MyUCRadio, and make sure you're following us on Instagram at MyUCRadio.
And you're
Good
gonna
night,
act
kids.
like you think that just because he's married, we don't ask for how many quarters for his husband too, bitch.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
And thank
See
you,
you guys
Sandy, for
Tuesday.
coming in
Thank you.
today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, have
See
a
you
wonderful
later.
night for the guys over in the US. So I'll see you next time, maybe. Ciao.
Definitely.
Have a good one,
Bye.
Sandy.
See you Tuesday.
Bye.
Ciao.
See you Tuesday.